Do you like rare meat? Do you like a fine barbecue? You ever go to a pig roast? Then the Ferrari 458's for you. This week, Ferrari 458 fires, J.F. Musial, Alex Roy, the Road Testament. Why is the 458 catching fire, and what does this say about its owners? And us.
And us.
Today on the Road Testament. The Ferrari 458.
Yes. Great car.
A great car.
Even though neither of us have driven it.
Even though I don't even like Ferraris. But I've driven it in Forza Motorsports, and apparently it's a great... People I trust love the car.
That's true, yeah. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
And yet it's been catching fire.
Yeah, I guess it's in the past, I think since May, there's been a handful of incidents of, well, Ferrari 458's wrecking, but about, 5 or 6 that have caught in fire.
Accidents are old news. Nobody cares.
Exactly.
4 fires.
4 fires to be exact. Okay.
China.
Okay.
Guy in Switzerland in the Alps.
Okay.
Guy in Paris.
Paris.
And one in London.
Of course, when there are exotic cars out on the road, especially the first batch that reach the road, they're going to wreck because,
they're exotics.
Exotics. Yeah.
And the first buyers are usually the guys... If it's a collector, he's not driving it, and if it's a driver, he's probably the guy dumb enough to pay retail or above in the first as soon as it comes out.
Yeah, and and most of those drivers will keep it on the track. It's the guys who want to actually just show them off who are beating the living crap out of them and wrecking them.
But we don't care about the wrecks. We're talking about the fires.
Yes, and, it's a big story on the blogs this past week about how all these Ferraris are catching on fire, and no one knows why. And it's gotten to a point so much that Ferrari is going to start investigating why their new exotic is catching fire. Well,
look, we spent some time talking about the Toyota unintended acceleration issue, and a few months ago, and it turned out that we were right. Most of those turned out to be driver error, and very few of those things.
I think it came down to just 1 or 2 that were a result of mechanical failure.
And we learned, of course, that Toyota's rate of unintended acceleration is comparable to Volvo's, but no one's covering that story. And I bring that up because I think you know where I'm going with this. Those 4 fires are interesting because how many 458s have been manufactured, you think?
I think probably in the range of about 1,000 at this point.
Okay, so we have, say, 1,000 cars. We have 4 fires.
Yep.
The London fire was while the car was at Heathrow, about to be transported. It was not being driven.
Yes.
The other 3 Ferraris that caught fire were all being driven at the time.
Yep. And in locations that you would expect something bad to happen. So in the Alps, in Switzerland.
I know where you're going with this.
If you're going through the gears, you have to keep in mind these are exotics. So you can't really beat on them. They will have their issues, and if you really
you can beat on them.
Well, if you leave it in a high RPM for minutes on end, something's going to break.
That happens on the track all the time.
Well, yeah, and especially going up and down the Alps, high altitude, and you're just going through the gears
How
constantly.
often do the cars catch fire on the track? Not often.
No, it happens, but it's because you're beating them.
So if you think that we're both about to say that this is all a big hoax, that's certainly not what I'm saying. Is that what you're saying?
I think that people are paying too much attention to this story because, well, it's a new brand of Ferrari. It's a new model of Ferrari.
Everyone likes to laugh about a supercar Schadenfreude catching fire.
And in the past 2 weeks, there's no auto shows other than Pebble, and these journalists, these bloggers are just trying to make a story out of nothing. You've got 4 cars catching on fire.
So if one caught fire spontaneously, would that be a story?
No. Absolutely not.
Okay, I agree.
Okay.
Let's go the other way. Do you think that whatever the problem is, that this is, say, the same level of automotive misrepresentation of automotive journalists or the general press about a manufacturer like Ferrari that's an exotic? Do you think this is the same level of foolishness and misinformation that we saw during the Toyota incident?
Yes. That's exactly what I'm trying to get
Exactly.
Journalism isn't what it used to be. I think people are trying to draw conclusions that aren't really there. The fact that Ferrari is responding, they're only responding because of all the hype that's happening online right now. I don't think it has anything to do with any flaws with the car at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's go the other way.
Okay.
Let's suppose for a second that driver error was in fact what occurred with these Ferraris.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think there will be any major press coverage of that?
Absolutely not.
Because Toyota, there was no press coverage of the driver error factor there at all.
What are you trying to get at?
Well, what I'm getting at is, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I mean, I want to believe that Ferraris catch fire spontaneously because it's just funny to believe that those cars do. But, what I really think the problem is, whether or not the Ferrari story turns out to be driver error, is that when accidents occur, all right, the word accident, its definition is cheapened. Because there's no such thing. When one car impacts something, catches fire, or stops moving for reasons in conflict with the driver's desire, that's not really an accident, is it?
No.
It's driver error.
Yep.
And if you go, let's go way back. Let's go to something completely outside of cars. You hear about this Airbus in 2008 in Spain that crashed. Recently, in fact, it was on Gizmodo. There was a story saying that apparently the aircraft crashed because ground-based diagnostic hardware, similar to what we hook up in the OBD port to our cars, was infected with malware, therefore failed to diagnose problems with the plane. Plane took off and crashes. So
that was not pilot error. That was error with the computer system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
and when you think of all aviation disasters out there, a lot of things that happen are caused by pilot error.
Correct. That's an example of a true accident.
Yes.
When's the last time you heard of any car that actually had an actual design flaw that caused a spontaneous and catastrophic failure of a critical part that ended up resulting in a catastrophic and fatal accident? It's happened.
The only time I hear of it on a regular basis, even though it doesn't happen that much, is in racing, in Formula One, for example.
Well, because they're
pushing the limits.
They're pushing the limits of the parts. But when a civilian car is sold, it's manufactured, well, we hope it's manufactured to a level of reliability. Well, reliability and catastrophic failure are two different things.
No, but those parts and components are tested far greater than to exceed any expectations as what they'll encounter in the real world.
I'm saying that the word accident has been cheapened, and that there are very few failures ever resulting in catastrophic accidents that are critical design flaws. I can think of two exceptions. Without a doubt, the Ford, problem with the Crown Vic and similar cars, which had the fuel tank mounted to the rear of the rear axle,
so that when there was a rear
impact, it exploded into flame, and that was an obvious design flaw.
There were also with the Ford Explorers, the tires, the Firestone tires
but that wasn't really a design flaw in as much a function of a heavier vehicle than average with tires that are underinflated. So actually, that's driver error because
but they came from the factory.
Underinflated?
Yeah, I think.
Wait, all right. If they came from the factory underinflated, then that's manufacturer. But when you buy a car, it comes with a manual, and inside the door you have a thing with the correct tire pressures.
Right.
So that's driver error.
So
ignorance. And look, police say ignorance is no excuse from enforcement of the law.
Yeah.
Is ignorance an excuse for not saving your own life?
I see what you're saying.
At the higher level.
I see. So in conclusion, what are we trying to get at with the 458's catching on fire?
You can make no judgment about Ferrari as a manufacturer based on what we know, and any journalist that does, even in tone, is doing the public a great disservice. In the same way that Toyota and Audi previously were victims of this. Look, there are such things as catastrophic failures. They're just really rare. And Occam's razor, if you saw Contact, the simplest explanation for anything is usually the true one, and the simplest explanation for almost anything going on with a car, always, is driver error. And the driver error may be a very obvious one. It shouldn't have bought that car.
That's a good ending.
Dodge K cars? No. Next week on the Road Testament, we're going to move on to something a little sexier. Gumpert.